Greetings, fellow peasants and warriors of Norland. Rhadamant here. Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of a brand new series, Playing Norland. If you would like to skip the game's overview or the setup of this specific series, please use YouTube chapters, and more information can be found in the description of this video. Welcome everybody to a brand new series, Playing Norland, which is the August miniseries marathon. Norland is a medieval kingdom sim that generates stories. You manage your noble family and face with class, society, crime, slave revolts, religious conflict, economic issues, personal relations, treachery, secret murders, and spectacular battles. The game is a bit like what you would get if you crossed RimWorld with Crusader Kings. And it, of course, will air on YouTube. For this specific series, I'll be playing the husband, wife, and child start as Varn, which is one of the 4 cultures in the Silverhaven territory. So let's get that set up, and then I'll read the rest of the details. So there are a bunch of different types of family starting, and I'm doing the husband, wife, and child, which is arguably maybe a little bit harder, as you have fewer people to delegate duties to. And then in terms of culture, there are 4. There's Caden, which is sort of a militaristic. There's Varn, which is peace. There's Tanaya, which is about intrigue and bureaucracy. And then Makha, which is trade and brewing and alchemy and the like. Varn is all about peace, and we are going to personify that as a kingdom. So let's go ahead and get our leaders, and the 3 starting characters have already been raffled off to my Patreon patrons. So for my starting characters, I'm going to have a king who is good at management, or actually good at intelligent, maybe management and trade. And I want them to be fairly young, as these starting characters I want to last for a while in game. So something in the young 20s would be ideal. And then I'm going to say that their ultimate goal is going to be management focused. So 25 years old, 24 years old, there we go. And you are going to be named Pleb. Oop, if I could spell. There we are. All right. Then the queen. Let's go with... And let's also select traits. I'm going to be monogamous and nervous. So monogamous means they don't cheat on their spouse, and nervous means that their nervous breakdowns are more severe. So I'm going to have to be more cautious about avoiding nervous breakdowns. And I'm going to do the same for the queen here as well. Same character traits. Now for her specific skills, I'm going to give her intelligence and teaching. And her focus is going to be on teaching. And I might have to tinker with their specific stats a little bit more, but that's at least the idea. So 25, 25. All right, 25 and 26, and your name is going to be Ava Wren. And then the child here doesn't really start with any stats, as they are a small child, so I don't really have to roll anything, which is good. And you're going to be Colin. And Colin's ultimate goal is going to be trying to be a managerial master, just like his father. And again, just like his father, taking these same traits. Maybe I'll change your hair color, though, so you don't look like you're not part of the family tree. There we go. Alright, looking good. Now, continuing on, as far as the details go, I did say that I was starting in Silverhaven, so there's a bunch of different regions you can start in. I'm picking Silverhaven because it's a relatively easy one, and it's positioned in a certain spot that's going to play into our role-playing Varn style. So Silverhaven is going to start off as independent. If you wanted to, you could annex territory right at the start. But I'm not going to be doing that, because I want to start off as just a single, undeveloped, independent country. And our culture, of course, will be Varn as well. You could hypothetically have a culture that is not of the same royal family, but that would be probably hard mode, I think. The name of this, of course, will be Yodaville, as it always is. And let's work on the sign. Now, there isn't... Is there a dog-looking thing here? The stag. Yoda has a heart of a lion, so we'll do a sort of a lion thing. And of course, it needs to be white, because, yeah, that's Yoda. I like it. All right, there we go. And then the villages that we are bound to in Yodaville will be an iron village and an herb village. And these are picked for strategic reasons as well, as I will explain as we play. Now, as far as the game parameters, I'm going to be starting off with the prisoner scenario. The game requires you to pick a scenario. You can pick no scenario, but that's a bit too easy. So I'm going to have Varn as a prisoner at the start of the game. No crisis, and no extra modifiers. This is sort of like the way the game was about a year ago. Where, by default, about a year ago, this was how you would play. And the difficulty is going to be on normal. Let's start it up.
Nearly 200 years have passed since the end of the devastating religious war. The empire fell, and its former provinces eventually became barbarian kingdoms. The church managed to revive hope, and peace and prosperity reigned over the ruins of the former civilization. Over time, the influence of the church only grew. But history is cyclical, and power cannot remain in one's hands for long. Wars between kingdoms flare up one after another. Hunger and poverty force people to abandon their homes and seek refuge in neighboring settlements. Can your dynasty unite the kingdoms and halt the advance of the Dark Ages? From this moment on, history is written by you.
So that is the intro cinematic. And the continent is in turmoil and splintered and needs guidance. And as a sandbox game, you can decide whether that's through peace or war, conquest or alliances. And it's also worth noting that for this specific series, I'm going to be playing methodically, meaning slowly, micromanaging, and covering as many of the game mechanics as I can to help teach the complexities of Norland, because it is quite complex. And the goal of this specific series, as I sort of alluded to, is that we are going to live by Varn values, creating a fair and prosperous empire through hard work and determination, except for unless you're Kaiden, because, you know, the Varn hate Kaiden. So, the year is 2898 since the creation of the world. 200 years have passed since the great Crimson Empire perished in the flames of the religious war. Its former provinces have become the barbaric kingdoms, kept from mutual destruction only by the all-powerful Church of Mother Sophia. While the holy prophets speak of the impending end of the world, in one of the small kingdoms, a dream of the birth of the new empire is taking shape. So the game does have a proper tutorial, but I've chosen to skip it and instead try to explain things myself, just so that we can jump into the gameplay. But before I start doing anything, I think for people that don't know Norland at all, it would benefit you all to know a little bit about the game mechanics and the user interface. So, most importantly is the nobles in your royal family listed here at the top. So Colin is a child and doesn't hold one of these 6 noble positions, but there's a finite number of nobles that you can directly control, seen up here. So there's Kleb, our king, and Avaren, our queen, and the queen right now is a hostage. If you click on any of them, you get their inventories, and this should be pretty similar to RimWorld. You get their moods and bars for what they need, and their thoughts. You've got their specific skills, and then what skill they would like to level up to 15 so that they can develop personally. You've got the relationships for people nearby, or in general, you can use filters for that. And then, lastly, you have history, basically a written log of what has happened to them. In the top left, you have your peasants, and in the parentheses is the currently unemployed, and then below is how many people are coming in, migrating. You've got prisoners as well. Prisoners in this game, honestly, could be called slaves instead. Prisoners act as slaves. You've got warriors. Warriors are people that do not work, but they fight and guard. And then you have crime. Vagabonds and cutthroats that are citizens, usually citizens that, or peasants rather, that were unemployed that have turned to crime. Next up is your relationship to the matriarch, and this is relatively important. The matriarch is, if we take a look at the world map, they are an unconquerable sort of citadel here in the ocean, and they influence with their, you can think of them as like the Pope or something during the Middle Ages, where they have a ton of influence but not territory. Then this flag here is the problems that the game has identified in your current kingdom. It's worth noting that not all the problems are actually problems, so sometimes it will throw a problem flag, but it's not solvable. Then next, you have your gold, and gold is used to pay everybody in your kingdom their daily wages, and to trade, and to pay taxes and the like. And then holy rings. Holy rings are a little complicated, but essentially all your royals want to have holy rings. Having too few holy rings is a sign of disrespect, and too many is a sign of avarice. So a lot of the times, individual characters will want holy rings, and they cannot be manufactured. They can only be purchased from holy caravans, which come periodically, and they are manufactured by the matriarch, essentially. But you can think of them as just like, when you, like, gems for your fancy crown. Then you have your stockpiles. So we have rutabaga and flour. And different foods have different qualities. So like rutabaga is not a particularly tasty food and people don't like eating it. Whereas flour is sort of neutral. And then even better is meat, which is like the royal food. You have alcohol. And in the game, your characters will need to consume food and alcohol regularly. So somewhat similar to maybe Dwarf Fortress. In Dwarf Fortress, all of your dwarves consume alcohol, and if they don't, they get really upset. Very similar game mechanics here. Then we have medical salves and so on and so forth. So these are the rest of the stockpiles. I don't need to go over them individually. Then on the top right, if you're ever stuck, there is this help menu, which covers just about everything. I would say the in-game help menu is honestly pretty great and very detailed. So when things become relevant for what we're currently working on, I might pop open the help menu, find the relevant tutorial and read it off for you so that you have a little bit further and deeper context about what's going on. Down below is your construction menu. So we have construction, we have production, we've got finances, we've got statistics so that you can track things over time. We have the military tab, And all of these things I'm going quickly over, but I'll go more in detail, of course, as we play. We have the dynasty and what we're allowed to use and eat and wear and all that. We have got knowledge, which is incredibly important and is honestly kind of a cornerstone and very unique in the way it is handled in this game. Then we have trade, but we have no active trade partners. And then the world. So here in the world, we've got neighbors, and the neighbors... this should be similar to, like, Crusader Kings. The neighbors will all have their buy and sell. So, like, Wind Peak here does not like us much, you can see. -7. Well, that's not that bad. And they want to sell herbs and buy rutabaga. Dust Valley wants to sell iron and buy rutabaga. And Starstream wants to sell wheat and buy moonshine. And they all have their own religious families, royal families here. Let me hide the overlay real quick so you can actually see that a little bit better. So you have the whole royal families for each individual entity and their kin and offspring and all of that. So all of the other political entities on the world tile here all have individual characters where you can build up relationships, intermarry, wage war, form alliances, form trade agreements, etc. Alright, the first thing I want to do is just to get a starting sort of village going on. So the buildings we have currently. There's a level 1 dormitory, which is for peasants, and it can house up to 10 residents. And we currently have 7, so I don't need another dorm. We have got a market, and a market allows people to buy flour, meat, and rutabaga, essentially their foods. We have got the Lord's Hall, and this is sort of the keep, or where the king and queen and royal family go, and also guests. So royal guests from other kingdoms will come and visit, and they would, this is like a large hall for instruction. It is also your building. So this building employs peasants that then become builders for your kingdom. And then these 4 buildings over here are lords' houses. And contrary to what you would assume, the king and queen do not share rooms. The children will share rooms often with the queen, but not, but you need, like, essentially 1 royal house per royal up here. And then guests will need their own royal houses as well. The first thing we want to do is to set up some basic industry. So let me update the priority now. Which means we need to be able to feed our people. We need to be able to build additional structures. And those 2 things are pretty straightforward. So I lucked out. And for whatever reason, started off with the ability to grow rye. So in the learning menu, you start off with some specific knowledge. And I have books about hops, mining, keeping prisoners, and rye field. And Averin actually started off knowing how to make a rye field, which is very nice. So speaking about that a little bit. Every day people want to eat and drink alcohol. And I'm going to raise the wages for peasants and warriors up to 6. So that they can buy 1 unit of rutabaga and 1 unit of moonshine every day in order to fulfill their food and drink requirements, because at 5, you couldn't. Now, if you're wondering, you could lower the cost of things. If you lower the cost of things now, there's not a penalty, but later on, if you are undercutting the market, if you lower the cost of something below its typical sale value, you're inviting people to essentially buy up your goods at cheap and then sell it at the market, cutting you out of the economy of scale. So it's really bad to drop your prices too low, because you'll suffer for it. And you will actually create crime syndicates based upon your lowered prices. So that's not good. So with that in mind, we are going to want a rutabaga field in order to keep people fed. And rutabaga are also the ingredients in order to make moonshine. So in terms of soil fertility, rutabaga is not too picky about soil fertility, and anywhere is fertile enough for rutabaga at a fertility of 60. You could, of course, put it on these sort of fertile zones to raise their fertility. With that in mind, rye only grows at 40% outside of the fertile zones. So it might be worth centering our rutabaga fields, not taking advantage of these fertile zones, except for maybe the first one. So when you're planning out your zones, it's worth noting that the world is not procedurally generated, it is static. So anytime you pick this specific territory, it's going to look exactly like this, where it has one field here, and other zones out here will have their own stats. So some zones really don't have fertile areas at all, and it becomes very difficult to grow hops, for instance. So I think initially, just for high yield, I'm going to use this field here. And what I would like to do is to try to lay it out so that I can fit as many potential rutabaga fields here at one time. So there's a rock here, which is going to sort of limit how I build. So 2 rutabaga fields, 1 and 2. And we'll get those built by our builders bringing over wood and constructing them. And then the rutabaga themselves will also then need to be brewed into moonshine. And it wouldn't hurt to also have a warehouse so that they can bring their goods to the warehouse. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a warehouse right here. And then I'm going to pave some roads. Roads are somewhat expensive to build, but they significantly increase movement speed. So they're a worthwhile investment, in my opinion. So what's going to happen here is King Kleb is going to go up to the hall. And this brings me to a very important game mechanic, where all buildings are ultimately managed by your royals, or by chancelleries, but let's go with royals for now because it will make more sense. And cheers, by the way. Meaning that if we want to build stuff, Kleb himself will not do the building. But what he'll do is he'll go up to the Lord's Hall and he'll have assignments. So you'll see here in just a second, he'll hammer a whole bunch of instructions into the wall for the 3 builders that work here, instructing them to do building for the day. And if you zoom out, you'll actually see a little bit of a timer here. So you see the management scale, which is 12, the manager, Kleb, the amount of employees, which is 3, and then this timer is essentially how long the instructions are good for. Once the timer runs out, the efficiency of the facility drops to like 50%. So it's really important that your managers regularly inspect and update instructions, or the facilities that they manage will suffer. And there we go. Now there's about 3 days of instructions, and the 3 builders that are now employed by this Lord's Hall will then do the Lord's bidding and build these facilities over here. So next to the warehouse, I'm going to also set up a brewery so that the rutabaga go from the fields to the warehouse to the brewery, and the brewery can bring their goods to the warehouse, and it cuts down significantly on travel time because of how close everything is. The other thing I can do is this dormitory, I could move for a very small cost of wood, and I'm going to move it right next to where everything works. So people wake up and they're already right next to the farms and warehouse and brewery that they work in. Additionally, I'm going to hold left shift so I can make a nice straight road and run a road all the way out to the left edge of the map. When people come and go in our kingdom, they will enter and exit via the left, unlike RimWorld where it might be random. So it's really helpful to have a road all the way out of your kingdom so that you can traverse to the world map quickly. Likewise, I'm ultimately going to move the Lord's house. So Kleb lives in this house here. I'm going to put his house directly next to the hall. And then Avaren, which is the queen, is going to do the same. These other 2 lords' houses I'm not too worried about right now because they're vacant. They're here for guests or for additional royal members. The next thing I want to do after we have the rutabaga fields is to set up lumber mills. So lumber mills are going to allow us to cut down trees so that we can expand. And I'm going to set this lumber mill up actually fairly close to the warehouse, because the shorter the run, the quicker they will be able to bring it to the stockpile, and also the closer it is to the dormitory, the better it will be for them as well. All right. Now on the left here, we have warnings. Avaren from Yodaville has been captured by forest bandits, and there are forest bandits in our lands. So if we look at Yodaville here, we have Briarcliff and Farwatch, which are our two villages within our territory. And then we have this camp of forest bandits. It's guarded by 6 bandits, and they also have Avaren as a hostage. So what I'm going to do is plan to rescue her. I'm going to go to the army tab here. And at the moment, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 warriors, but they are all really low level. And then we have Kleb, who is not very good at commanding and not very good at fighting. So what I would like to do is potentially hire some new fighters. So I can, let me hide my face here so I'm not blocking it. There are mercenaries that you can hire, and their martial skill is shown here. So the 3, 6, 6, so on and so forth. And then their culture is shown as a letter. So M, T, T, M. V would be Varn. So like this guy is Varn. He's relatively expensive, but I'm going to hire him anyway. And then the other cultures, as you can see out here, Maka, and there's Kaiden and Tayama. And I think I just don't want to hire Kaiden. So I'm going to also grab a few other lobies. So 1, 2, 8 total mercenaries. Done. Probably a stupid question, but what is the rotate button? Q and E. So if you move this and you hit Q and E, you can rotate. Not all buildings can rotate. So for instance, like a rutabaga field cannot rotate, but Lord's Halls or dormitories can rotate. Alright, so we have the lumber mill going up, the rutabaga fields, the warehouse, and the brewery. And if you take a look at the warnings that I have, build a lumber mill, Colin is not being educated. So let's fix that right now. So if we go to Colin, I can hit action, educate, and I can either educate him in manners and persuasion, in trade and management, in philosophy, which is intelligence and teaching, command and combat, or general teaching. I am going to do general training from Kleb. So Kleb, the king, will help to tutor his own son and get him better at skills. Now, another thing I'd like to build is a tavern. And taverns are quite important because taverns are where everyone will go to drink, all the non-royals. So the royals will drink in their hall, but everyone else drinks in the tavern. And then I also want to build an altar so that they can pray. I know the altar looks a little demonic with skulls and all that, but that's just the way the church works in this game. And these two are quite important, so I'm going to build them first. The altar and the tavern, because keeping people happy helps to increase your migration. And let's go over migration mechanics now a little bit more in detail. So if we take a look at the number of peasants here, we have got a whole lot of information. We have how many peasants are currently in the city, 7. The average mood, 85. The average wealth, 14 gold. How many are unemployed? Workers needed for open jobs, which is currently 2. And that number is obviously going to increase as we build all these facilities. And then the social composition of how many are fanatics, religious fanatics, believing in the matriarchy or the Church of Sophia. How many are nectar addicts? How many are loyalists? Loyalists would be loyal to the king. And then the cultural composition. Kaden, Tanaya, Maka, and Varn. And we are Varn, so everyone is currently Varn. It also shows how many expected migrants today. So 6 of them will come in and join us today. So I'm going to go over the tutorial for migration, which should be around here somewhere. But all of the mechanics here, yep, here's migration. The number of new peasants arriving each day mainly depends on the average mood of the peasants in the city. Additional factors. Unemployed people significantly reduce migration as people are looking for jobs. City growth reduces migration as a large city harbors many dangers. War in a neighboring province increases migration by 30% if refugees are fleeing for somewhere safe to live. And those refugees are going to be made up of the culture of the neighboring province that is at war. So, for instance, if the neighboring province is Varn, the refugee will be Varn. And then migration is also reduced by general or cultural terror. So you can terrorize your own people, and that will reduce migration because who would want to live somewhere terrifying? Hints! You can view the expected number of migrants, and I've already shown that. New settlers bring with them accumulated gold from their previous location, so that could be useful to increase your total gold. And then you can reduce migration by spreading negative rumors in your villages on the world map or by selling less alcohol. So if you have an overpopulation problem where you have a lot of migrants coming in and they're turned into crime, just don't sell booze. Or spread rumors that you are a bad kingdom to live in or increase your terror. And the reason I mention this is a pitfall I see a lot of new players land in, where they grow really quickly and then they balloon out so much that their whole empire turns to crime, or not the whole empire, but a significant portion of the empire. So it's very important to carefully manage migration. Now that this Rhadamant field is built, I'm going to assign Kleb as the manager. And then Kleb will have to go out and pin instructions for how to manage that Rhadamant field. Colin is gained persuasion and manners from leveling up from King Kleb. So if we take a look at his traits, his manners have gone up and his persuasion has gone up. Much like in RimWorld, the experience scale climbs considerably. So going from like level 1 to level 5 is really easy. Going from like level 14 to level 15 is very difficult. Just figured I would mention that. Alright, we are also expecting 5 new migrants. That number actually changed since the last I checked, and that's just like a result of mood and all that. But that also means that it would be beneficial to consider another dormitory. And perhaps I'll put the dormitory here, but I'm going to probably wait until the lumber mill is built. Or alternatively, I can move these lord houses and have them not block the dormitory. I think I will go that method. Move them out over here, out of the way. Spending a little bit of wood, but it's worth it, I think, in the long run. So I can put another dorm here, and it won't block anything. So here's the tavern. And it's important to note that the working hours of the tavern and the market are from 18 to 24. So there's a mandated sort of like recreation time for both of these things towards the end of the day. And Colin's already leveling up some more. Alright, if I want Kleb is actually already going for an inspection. Yeah, I can see my overlay is going to be continually a problem. It would take me like 15 minutes to rebuild it and move it to somewhere better, though. Which is why I'll just hide it when it becomes an issue. So Kleb's already heading over to manage the Rhadamant field, pinning up the instructions about what to do, which is please just plant Rhadamant, easy enough. But this indicator right here means that there aren't enough employees. So only one of the 3 people are currently working in there. I can try to rebuild my UI as I play, I guess. It's a lot easier said than done. The other thing I could actually do, which might be a little bit easier, so if I reduce the UI scale, I can move it up, but it's going to be harder for you guys to read, but maybe that's ultimately better if it's not blocking. Let me try that. Because moving it left to right is really difficult, but moving it up is not so bad. Yeah, that could work. I'll just have to be more clear about reading the UI. So the other Rhadamant field also just got built, and I'm going to assign Kleb to manage it. It's not as important for Kleb to manage it, however, because there really just aren't people for those jobs. And we only expect 5 migrants today. So there's going to be a lot of like empty work. Thank you for tuning in to Norland, which originally streamed live on Twitch as a marathon August 17th and August 18th. If you have any feedback or questions for me, let me know in the comments below, but please keep in mind that this episode was cut from a marathon, meaning that feedback cannot be incorporated. If you would like to catch a live stream of mine, Rhadamant.com has my stream schedule and countdown timers to upcoming streams, and if you would like to join my online gaming community on Discord, Rhadamant.com has a link to it, as does the description of this video. Thank you so very much for watching, and a special thank you to my Patreon patrons, Twitch subscribers, and viewers like you that support the channel and made it all the way to the credits. Thank you so very much. I hope to catch you next episode or an upcoming stream. Farewell, my fellow Varn.